million lights, they flicker there. A million hearts beat quicker there. No skies are gray on the great wide way, 'cause that's the Broadway melody.
Hey, thanks for clicking in. I'm Jason Crawford Samuel,
And I'm Patrick J. Golden.
and this is Backstage Banter. So for this episode of Backstage Banter, we're going to be talking about The Elephant Man by Bernard Pomerantz, which is being co-produced by Fells Point Corner Theater, as well as the Collaborative Theater Company, and it is playing at Fells Point Corner Theater. This particular production is being directed by Anthony Lane Hinkle, with costumes by Ben Kress, set and lighting design by Kel Milioni, and sound design by Chris Aldrich. Now, this play is also a movie made in 1980 of the same name, starring Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt. And it is the true story of, unfortunately, the true story of Joseph Merrick, who is called John Merrick in the play and the movie. But it is a true story of Joseph Merrick, who was a severely deformed gentleman in Victorian England, and they called him the Elephant Man because of his deformities. And actually, if you go online and look up Joseph Merrick, you'll be able to find tons of pictures and what have you. He's a very famous gentleman in the freak shows. And actually, this play picks up right after his time in the freak shows, when he ended up living at the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel because of his friend who turned out to be his friend, Dr. Frederick Treadis. But this production, the only thing I can say about this production is that it is an amazing production. One of the best productions I've seen in Baltimore recently. Everything works in this production, and you should go see it. It's not to be missed. Start off with set design by Kel Milioni. Walking into the theater, I knew that I was in for a treat because the set was near perfect. It's a unit set, but it had levels. There were contrasts. For instance, there were two main entrances. One was a very elegant French door setup, and the other was a type of alley or dark hallway that showed the contrast in class, I think, between the rich and the poor in Victorian age England. And the set was a delight to see. It was clean. It was very, like I said, the levels worked out nicely for the actors, and it kept everything interesting.
To add on to the set, the levels, I feel, added, it reminded me like a funnel, had the sense of fluidity for the actors in the sense that it allowed their movements to just be very natural, like the movement of water. No one ever got stuck on stage at any point, and I think that set was built with that just in mind, that right there.
Right. And it was a very clever set because Kel Milioni used his space very wisely. Now, there were set pieces that came out for different scenes, but when they weren't being used, they were stored right in the set. Because, as some people may know, if you've worked in the theater, space is limited, but he used this stage and this space very wisely by using it as storage as well as performance space. And it was very clean. It's a very clean set, which I can't explain it, but it made everything just, so much more nice. It made it nicer. That takes us into lights and sound, which, in a play isn't a huge, something you notice. I'm not going to say it's not a huge effort, because I'm sure anybody working in theater will tell you it is, and I know it is. But it's maybe something that's not as noticed in a play as opposed to a musical. But the lights for this one were also designed by Kel Milioni. He had quite a few hats in this production. I liked the lights. I noticed them because there was a lot of work with shadows and lights, and it reminded me of the shadow dimly lit scenes. Reminded me in my opinion, of John Merrick himself, the Elephant Man himself, how he lived most of his short life in the shadows. He was different, and people weren't used to what he was, the deformities that he had. So he lived his life, in the back alleys, in the dark playhouses, performing in the freak shows. But yet other people that were in scenes were very brightly lit, which showed the contrast between him and his cohorts of the day.
When it comes to the lights, I never had a question throughout which scene was night and day, while it was very well lit the entire time. That was a great job on that. And for sound, the musical pieces that were used to transition from scene to scene very much complemented the setting and time period.
They were very appropriate.
They never took you out of where you were.
They didn't hinder the performance at all. They complemented it very nicely. So the choices that were made by Chris Aldrich they worked seamlessly and transitions. Even there were only a few sound effects. I think there was like an angry mob kind of thing going on, but everything was fit perfectly into the production and kind of moved it along instead of it wasn't blaring in your face. Everything complemented the story to go along. Speaking of complementing, costumes. This is a period piece, and period pieces are difficult to costume. Sometimes you need some money, or you can be very creative. But Ben Kress, the costume design, I think he hit the nail on the head with this. I could definitely see the difference between the lower class and the upper class from just the little details, such as the tattered coats. I think one character had on a velvet top hat that was all old and worn down and what have you, as one of the lower class characters, whereas the upper class characters were dressed finely. Their costumes seemed to fit them very nicely. They were comfortable in their costumes. All of the characters were comfortable in their costumes. And a special recognition should go out to Shelley Stephens Joyce, who actually built, I believe, costumes for one character. She built these gowns for the character of Mrs. Kendall. And they were absolutely stunning. They were beautiful. And, it looked like they were made, tailored to fit the actress that was wearing them. But the costumes, I think, were spot on.
Like you said about the costumes, comfort. They definitely, all the actors seemed very comfortable throughout. It didn't hinder their movements whatsoever, any of the costume pieces. And the costumes for Mrs. Kendall, built by Miss Shelley, they were impeccable. I mean, not only fit the time, these were truly elegant, down to the trim on these dresses.
If they were in fact built from scratch, kudos to Miss Joyce for building these costumes.
Very much so.
I think they were very authentic. Very authentic. Direction from Mr. Anthony Lane Hinkle. What'd you think? I'll let you start.
I thought he did a brilliant job on. I have to say, just in general, this is probably one of the best, most moving pieces I've seen in years in Baltimore, period. But his interpretation of it, he was very good just getting the characters, like I said, around the stage.
The blocking was very good.
The blocking was very good. Everything was very natural, both in the acting and in their movements. And I'm sorry, what would you
it was very authentic. I think his direction. This is a very challenging piece. From day one, anyone who agrees to direct The Elephant Man, they're in it for the long haul. Again, it's a poignant piece. It's a moving piece. It's a biographical piece. So you got to do your research. And it seems to me in this production that Mr. Hinkle did his research. I think he took the time. I think his scenes were well thought out. And, he used the levels that were given to him from the set designer. He worked with everything. And he used projections. Now, projections sometimes are 50-50 with me. I can go one way or the other with projections. Sometimes I do not like them, sometimes I do. This case, they were used very wisely. He and Kel Milioni were the folks that took on the responsibility of choosing the projections. And one thing I did notice that these projections did not hinder the performance. It did not stop the show. They were used as transitions, but they were educational. I learned some things from these projections. They weren't obligatory. They were there for a reason. Each projection that they chose to use, filled in the blanks of the story and moved the story along. Again, like I said, they were very educational, and I appreciated them. As an audience member, I appreciated these projections, and it helped me understand the story of John Merrick a little better. But also, again, he did his research, he took his time, and I think as an all-round good show, he took the reins, the helm of this show, and made it, took it from page to stage, that transition, very nicely. Alright, so to go on into the performances. This ensemble as a whole was very, very good. Just to mention, it wasn't a huge ensemble. I believe there were 7 folks all together. Everyone except the actor playing John Merrick played other parts. They played two or three parts at a time, which was very clever casting. And to start off, Elizabeth Ung and Darius Foreman were two actors that played a few supporting characters. They were kind of on and off of the stage, and Elizabeth Ung was very good. She played a nurse that was supposed to take care of John Merrick and realized that it's not something she wanted to do just because of the way he looked. Right. And she played, I believe, a princess. Minor characters, but she gave 100%. I think she even played a pinhead at one time as part of the freak show. 100%. And again, her characters, she was comfortable on stage, she was comfortable with the differences in her characters, and her characters moved the story along. They weren't obligatory at all. Darius Foreman played a couple of supporting characters again, and though his performance probably was not as strong as the rest of the cast, and there were many times I couldn't understand a thing he was saying. He held it, he gave 100% to his performances to again, I think in the end, just to move the story along, everybody gave 100%. Again, you think of the supporting?
There's really not much I can add for Elizabeth and Darius. Like you said, especially with Darius, came out definitely given 110%. His speech, the accent, wasn't all there.
Could use a little more work.
Yeah. But honestly, accents are hard. Whoever said accent's easy is lying.
And actually, Darius' accent went from Cockney all the way up to the Queen's English too, so that's difficult.
And that's another level of difficulty right there. Yes.
But again, either way, they gave 100% on stage. I could definitely tell. We have Mark Scharf, who played Car Gum, who was the head of the Royal London Hospital, and I think he played his part very well. It was a very respectable performance. He made me believe that he was a part of that upper crust, and I just imagine talking to him that he would talk to me down his nose. So, did a very good job. But he also played the part with just enough humanity that you didn't hate him, but he wasn't your favorite person, but you didn't hate him completely because of what his character does throughout the entire show.
Mark did an amazing job. Like you mentioned, the tinge of humanity was just a little addition, but great. The character was very matter of fact, and he was very respectable as the character. Yes,
He's very Victorian England.
It was like nothing was ever personal; it was always professional, and even then, there was never ill intent. He played the depth of the character was a lot more. In depth than I initially thought it was.
Right.
It went a lot more than surface. He did amazing.
Good. Frank Mancino plays two characters. One named Ross, who was, I believe he was something of a road manager or a handler for John Merrick when John Merrick was in the freak show circuit, whatever they call it. As well as, on the other end of the spectrum, he played a holy man. He played a bishop. Bishop Waltham Howe. And he played these two characters very well. The differences in the characters, one, streetwise, Cockney, poor kind of character, peasantly, I guess, for lack of a better term. And then you had this man with the cloth, who was very proper, prim, spoke very well with other people, and a part of the upper crust of Victorian England. The only criticism I have is I wish I could understand what he was saying. He was very hard to understand, though he had a booming voice, very good command of the stage, great stage presence, just couldn't understand him. But it wasn't enough that I didn't understand what was going on in the show. I still understood what was going on in the story, just couldn't hear the actual words from it, but gave a phenomenal performance for both his characters.
Like you said, his voice, very booming. I think the accents, they were good. I think they may have gotten in the way a little bit. And also to mention, just to go back to sound a little bit, none of the actors, none of the cast was mic'd for this show.
Right. Not that they needed to.
Not that
theater's
they
not
needed
huge.
Yeah, it's a small theater. The acoustics are good. But if an actor, not to presume he is, but are used to mics, to project more, can be a slightly difficult transition. It takes a little practice.
I actually was rattled when he came out the first time. He kind of comes out as a barker kind of thing, you step right up kind of thing. He actually scared me when he said that first because he's so booming. So he had the projection. Just wish I could understand what he was saying, that's all. But great performance from Frank Mancino. Which takes us into Sean Coe, who actually plays the very brave young doctor, Frederick Trevis, who actually takes in John Merrick with his deformities, with everything that he has to take care of him. This character has a very good transition, and Sean Coe played it beautifully. He started off the character simply as a scientist who wanted to study this deformed man, but ended up being a friend in the end. And I think the transition was, it was seamless, but it was gradual, which I think made it very good. His interactions with Grayson Owen, who played the Elephant Man, were very good, authentic. It was an all-around good performance. It was a very, very commendable performance from Sean Coe.
About Mr. Coe, just like you said, his look for the character, his portrayal of the character, his speaking voice, everything about him was perfect for Dr. Frederick Trevis. And there's really not much I can add to it. He was great.
Speaking of look, though, Frank Mancino.
Yes. He was a guy, I don't mean this in any bad way, but his look were definitely great for his parts. Each part he had, it was just, well, one you definitely didn't like, the other one it was just almost a tinge of dislike, but he just had either looked nasty or looked pompous, and his physicality in that sense was brilliant, I must say.
Willem Dafoe does that for me. He has that look, I just don't like him, and he always seems to play those kind of characters that I don't like. Some people do, I don't. Anyway, but Sean Coe, very commendable performance, good performance as Dr. Frederick Trevis. Now that takes us into the performance of Aladrian Wetzel. Well, this young lady, I can't wait to see more from Aladrian. Number one, I mean this in the most respectful way possible. Number one, she's stunning to look at. She's a beautiful, beautiful actress. You almost can't take your eyes off her when she's on stage. And like I said, her costumes that were made for her, she was the actress I was talking about, they were made kind of tailored to her. She was just stunning to watch. She has this very unique voice that resonates throughout the theater. It's a very alto kind of voice, a little lower than the feminine voice of the ingenue that people are used to. But I mean, everything about her performance was spot on. She was an actress playing an actress. Number one, she played the part of Mrs. Kendall, who ended up being John Merrick's confidant and possible attraction there from John Merrick's side anyway. And when she came on stage, I mean, she was comfortable on stage. She had a very good command of the stage, and I can't wait to see more from this young lady. She just gave a very spot on, phenomenal performance. And do you have anything about her performance? Get into, yeah.
Yeah, her performance, yes, but I gotta say, just her presence when she comes on, to say she commands the stage, I don't think is enough credit. I mean, I have seen countless actors that are comfortable on stage. Like, it's second nature. Adrian, it's like she was born to be on stage.
Yeah.
Like that, it almost seems like that is home for her.
She's comfortable. She's very, very comfortable. She's natural.
Right.
She gives authentic performances. And speaking of authentic performances, her interactions with Grayson Owen, who plays John Merrick again, the Elephant Man, their relationship, I believed it from the get. Very authentic. The conversations they have, the way they react to each other on stage. I wish I could have seen some rehearsals, just because it is so real. I get lost. I got lost in their scenes, what they were talking about, the authenticity of everything. They were beautifully casted as these two characters.
When both of them were on stage at the same time, it truly was like being a voyeur through a window. Like, these two people embodied their characters, and the chemistry there was just organic from beginning to end. This relationship, this friendship that blossomed throughout gradually, but clearly, it was just amazing. It was great to watch.
This could be the performance, or it could be the character, the way it was written. The character of Mrs. Kendall, you expected one thing when you saw her, and then she flipped it up on you, and she ended up being an entirely different kind of character. But the performance did help that a lot.
Yes.
Ladrian's performance helped it a lot. All right, and that takes us into Grayson Owen. The only thing I can say about this gentleman, he's the kind of actor I want to be when I grow up. His performance was phenomenal. Not only did it seem like he did his research, he thought about this character. He worked at this character. It looked like he worked his ass off for this character. The physicality alone, the dedication to that physicality. He's playing a severely deformed person, and kept that throughout the entire performance, the entire production. Even scene changes, he wouldn't give it up until he was off that stage. It was phenomenal. I haven't seen a performance like it in a very long time. Major kudos go out to him for this. His performance moved me. I haven't been moved by a performance in a long time. His performance moved me. It doesn't hurt that it's a true story and this really happened to somebody as well. But his dedication, his movements, everything about him was John Merrick. I don't know if he's a method actor or not, but I believed he was John Merrick. One highlight of his performance is the transition from an average man into John Merrick. I don't know how he did it, but it almost happened right before my eyes. It was like magic. That's the only way I can describe it. All of a sudden, he's standing there straight up as an average man. The next thing, his body's completely contorted, and he is John Merrick. Just a great performance. An absolutely phenomenal performance.
I have to say, Grayson, his physicality with it, first of all, acted the part brilliantly. I have never felt such strong sympathy pains watching something. That's how good he was with his contortions. And I have to say, the speech impediment that John Merrick has, executed perfectly,
Yes.
and still understood every single word clearly. You never missed anything he said.
Grayson worked hard.
Yes.
He worked hard for this part.
Very hard. If
And
anything,
it paid off.
yes, this is definitely an award nomination deserving part. His portrayal of John Merrick was just absolutely brilliant.
Anybody wants to, somebody give this man an award, some kind of award. He deserves it for this. So, in conclusion of I can't believe I just said in conclusion. Anyway, to round it all out, as I wrote in my written review, theater is supposed to make you feel something. Whether it's happy, sad, hopeful, lost, it's supposed to make you feel something. The Elephant Man, this production, gave me all the feels. It was a moving, poignant production that taught me about humanity, about myself a little bit, how I see other people, how I look at other people, and I think it did that with a lot of people. The audience seemed to react very much the same way that I did. when I saw this, the night that I saw this. But it's not to be missed. So that's what we thought of The Elephant Man. And The Elephant Man is going to be playing at Fells Point Corner Theater until October 2nd. And Fells Point Corner Theater is located at 251 South Ann Street in Fells Point. And you can get tickets online at their website, which is fpct.org, or you can give them a call at 410-276-7837. Now, you can also read the written review at backstagebaltimore.wordpress.com. And if you do get a chance to see it, which you should, leave us a comment. Leave us a comment down below, or leave us a comment on backstagebaltimore.wordpress.com, and we'll get back to you. So, thanks so much for joining us tonight, and see you next time.
Business like show, business like no business, I know. Everything about it is appealing, everything the traffic will allow. Nowhere can you get that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow. There's no people like show people, they smile when they are low. Even with a turkey that you know